In a village, nestled between rolling hills and a whispering wood, life had its own rhythm, as predictable as the seasons, yet for Ira, a young woman with eyes like melted starlight and hair, the color of autumn leaves, life's melody had faltered, leaving her stranded on a discordant note. Her brother, Alan, had vanished a year ago. Not a trace, not a whisper, not a goodbye, just an aching void where his presence once resided. The townspeople, with their pitying glances and hushed whispers, called it the curse of the silent woods, a fate that befell those who ventured too deep into the emerald embrace of the whispering pines and never returned. As days bled into weeks and weeks into months, despair threatened to consume Ira. She pored over every inch of the surrounding countryside, her heart cracking with each fruitless hour. Yet hope, fragile as it was, refused to die. She refused to believe her brother would abandon the one promise they had made to each other under their grandmother's apple tree. They would find a way to make music together, echoing their laughter and dreams into the world. Then, just as the first snow threatened to blanket the memory of her brother, a sliver of moonlight pierced the gloom. In a dream, Alaric appeared, his face illuminated by the spectral glow of the moon, beckoning her with a finger to follow him to the silent woods. Guided by the silvery thread of his dream, Ira embarked on a journey, her steps echoing with determination. She braved thorny thickets and moss-covered stones, her resolve hardening with each stride. When the moon veiled its face behind a curtain of clouds, Ira emerged into a clearing. Before her lay a path paved with worn cobblestones, its edges softened by creeping vines and luminescent moss. At its end, where it disappeared into the sheltering trees, a lantern hung suspended, casting dancing shadows on the ground. As Ira drew closer, the lantern flickered, revealing an inscription carved into the stone beside it. Where the moon weeps. The air grew heavy with the scent of petrichor and the faintest hint of honeysuckle, as if the forest itself was preparing for a long-awaited reunion. But it was the sound that truly stole her breath. A melody, haunting and beautiful, drifted from the heart of the woods. Hope, a bird that had almost flown away, soared back into her chest, beating its wings against her rib. The melody was a summons, a beacon calling her deeper into the woods. With the song echoing in her heart, Ira stepped onto the cobblestone path, her feet making hushed music on the ancient stones. The forests welcomed her, the trees parting to reveal the path's continuation, which wound ever deeper into their sheltering embrace. The melody grew in volume and clarity, guiding her like a friend through the emerald labyrinth. Suddenly, a lone figure emerged from the trees, silhouetted against the ethereal glow that seemed to emanate from within the woods. As he turned, the light caught his features, revealing a face etched with worry, yet radiant with recognition. It was Ryan, a young man whose name was synonymous with the whisper. His bond with the forest was as profound as the roots that ran through its heart. "Ira," he breathed, his voice echoing the concern in his eyes. "You shouldn't be here. The woods are treacherous." "I had to come," she replied, her voice firm, despite the tremor in her hands. "I heard the music." "The music," he echoed, his gaze distant. "It calls only to those the woods wish to test. Are you sure you want to go further?" Ira looked into his eyes, seeing the forest's wisdom reflected there. She knew the risks, yet her resolve was a shield against fear. "I must try," she said quietly. Ryan nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. "Very well," he said. "I'll guide you, but know this, the path ahead is shrouded in mystery. The woods are kind, but they are also ancient and unforgiving. Your journey is your own, Ira. What awaits you beyond is what you seek." With Ryan as her guide, Ira delved deeper into the woods. As the canopy closed overhead, the sunlight gave way to an otherworldly luminescence. Every step resonated with an ancient energy, whispering tales of forgotten magic and silent strength. Then they arrived at the edge of a clearing. In its center stood a massive oak, its branches reaching skyward like supplicating arms. At its base lay a circle of smooth stones, each bearing cryptic symbols that seemed to writhe and shift in Ira's vision. In the center of the circle, a single white rose bloomed, its petals unfurling in silent defiance of the surrounding shadows. It was a beacon, an invitation, and a warning. Here Owain's voice echoed the solemnity of the clearing. Hear the woods, test the heart's desire. If you seek only answers, the rose will bloom with truth. If you seek solace, it will blossom with peace. If you seek to understand, it will unfurl with wisdom. But know this, the rose's truth is not for the faint of heart. Its peace, a balm and a burden. Its wisdom, a double-edged blade. Ira stepped into the circle, the stones humming beneath her feet. As she approached the rose, its fragrance intensified, mingling with the earthy musk of the forest floor. She knelt before it, her fingers hovering over its velvety petals. "Show me," she whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and anticipation. "Show me what I need to see." As if in response, the rose shuddered, and a shaft of moonlight erupted from its core, enveloping Ira in a crystalline cocoon. When the light faded, the world shifted. The oppressive shadows had vanished, replaced by an ethereal glow that bathed the clearing in silver. The rose stood taller now, its thorns glowing with the same inner light, and from its heart, a voice resonated, echoing the very essence of the whisper. "Welcome, Ira, child of starlight. You have walked a moonlit path, guided by courage and love. Now the woods will show you what your brother seeks, and in doing so, set your spirit free." Ira's heart hammered against her ribs, a trapped bird yearning for the open sky. "Show me where he is," she whispered, her voice raw with emotion. The rose swayed gently, and the voice within it deepened. "He is where he always was, and yet he is where he must be. Look beyond what was, and you will see what must be." Suddenly, Ira understood. The woods weren't testing her desire. They were shaping it, honing it into something truer, something stronger. The clearing shimmered once more, and when it settled, two paths emerged from the silver mist. One led to the east, beckoning with a promise of dawn. The other wove towards the west, embracing the soft caress of twilight. At the end of each path, Ira saw figures. On the eastern path, Alan stood bathed in the warm glow of sunrise, his form solid, his eyes shining with the joy of life. On the western path, she saw a figure cloaked in the soft hues of dusk, its features obscured by shadow, yet radiating an otherworldly serenity. "Which path?" Ira whispered, her voice catching in her throat. "Which path leads to my brother?" The rose hummed, and the voice within seemed to sigh. "That, child of starlight, is for you to decide." The eastern path beckoned with a promise of reunion, of laughter echoing under an endless blue sky. The western path whispered of quiet understanding, of companionship in the soft embrace of twilight. And as Ira stood there, torn between the allure of dawn and the enigma of dusk, she realized the truth. The path her brother had walked wasn't merely a choice between two destinations. It was a choice between two versions of herself, two ways of being. The Ira of dawn, impulsive and passionate, driven by the fierce love for her brother. The Ira of dusk, contemplative and wise, tempered by the fires of her journey. She looked back at the rose, its petals shimmering with the combined essence of dawn and dusk. "I'd choose," she whispered, her voice echoing the strength she had found within, to carry both. The clearing shimmered once more, and when it cleared, Ira stood alone. The paths had vanished, but the rose remained, its petals glowing with the combined colors of dawn and dusk. As Ira stepped forward, she felt a surge of power course through her veins. The woods had tested her, not because they were malevolent, but because they were wise. They had shown her that true strength lay not in clinging to a single version of herself, but in embracing the totality of her being. Turning, she walked away from the clearing, her steps lighter, her heart fuller. As she emerged from the whisper wood, the sky blazed with the colors of twilight, mirroring the hues of the rose. The familiar world shimmered anew, its beauty enhanced by the depth of her journey. The moon, veiled behind a curtain of clouds, seemed to wink at her, acknowledging the starlight that now burned brighter within her. Though the path to understanding her brother's absence had been arduous, Ira had found her way. She carried with her the wisdom of the ancient woods, the strength of the moonlit path, and the enduring love for a brother whose spirit, like the melody at the heart of the woods, would forever resonate in her soul. Oh, my love, do you remember the rain? Do you feel the drops on your skin right now? Do you feel the wet grass between your toes, or the cold trickle running down your neck? Does it smell like petrichor to you? That earthy scent after a long drought? I hope it does. If so, then you're feeling the magic of the rain. Magic born of earth and sky, of thunder and lightning. Magic that sings through the trees and dances in the wind. But sometimes the rain falls soft, like tears from the clouds, or hides altogether, leaving only whispers of its presence in the rustling leaves and the parched ground beneath our feet. Even then, the magic remains. It lingers in the air, waiting, patient, like an ember under layers of ash. All it needs is a spark, a touch, a moment of belief. The days after the bridge shimmered past, like pages turning in a book she hadn't meant to finish. Ira returned to the village with mud on her boots and silence in her throat. People looked at her differently, now, not with pity, but with something older, reverence, perhaps, as if she had gone beyond the veil and returned. But she spoke little of what she'd seen. Some stories are too fragile for words. The moon rose and fell, and the rains did not return. Summer thickened the air. The forest whispered less. And though her hands were busiest stacking herbs, tending to the garden, patching the roof, her heart waited for rain, for the path, for the hum beneath her feet. But one night, as the wind turned cool and the stars looked down with remembering eyes, something changed. A knock on her door. Ira opened it to find a child, no older than 10, barefoot, hair tangled with leaves, her dress soaked through with pond water. In her small hands, she held something wrapped in moss. I found this near the old lake, the girl whispered, eyes wide with wonder. It was glowing. Ira crouched down, unwrapping the moss with gentle fingers. Inside was a lantern, small, rusted at the edges, but warm. Not with flame, but with light. A silver-blue glow pulsed softly inside it, like the breath of some dreaming star. Ira froze. Her fingers trembled. She knew this light. It was the same she had seen under the willow. The same light that had lived in Alan's eyes. Where exactly did you find it? She asked. The girl pointed toward the hills. The lake behind the old mill. It rose last night, flooded the path. But the lantern was dry, like it wanted to be found. Ira stood slowly. The moon was high again, full and white, and the stars shimmered like they were holding their breath. She turned to the child and placed a hand gently on her shoulder. Thank you. You've brought me a key. That night, Ira walked again, not toward the bridge this time, but toward the lake. The air was thick with mist. Frogs croaked from the reeds. The water stretched out, mirror still and glowing faintly, though there was no torch, no fire, and no stars overhead, just the moon, and its echo, and the lantern in her hand. She stepped into the shallows. The water rose to her knees, cool and clear. The reeds parted ahead, and there at the heart of the lake something stirred, a faint ripple, a sound like a bell underwater. And then, emerging like a ghost from the depths, stone steps, slick and shining, a staircase beneath the lake. She didn't hesitate. With the lantern held high, she followed the steps down into the water. Then below it, though her breath stayed steady, her clothes stayed dry. It was as if the lake had made space just for her. A tunnel of air beneath a world of rippling silver. And at the end of the stair, a door, old, carved with sigils she didn't recognize, but somehow understood. Alan's voice echoed faintly in her mind. This place remembers you now. She touched the door. It opened without a sound. Inside was not a room, but a memory. A wide glade beneath a twilight sky. Lanterns hung from trees. Stones floated mid-air. The air pulsed with gentle music, like lullabies sung by rivers. In the center of it all, a pool of still water, and Alan, sitting beside it. He stood slowly as she approached. You followed it, he said, voice threaded with awe. I think it followed me, she replied. They stood close again, the lantern's glow bathing their faces. This place, Alan said softly, is where the paths meet, where memory, rain, and moonlight gather. Not many find it. Fewer still are invited twice. Why me? Ira whispered. He looked at her with a kind of tenderness only the lost can carry. Because you loved without fear. And the path loves you back. She knelt beside the pool. The water was warm and still. What is it? A mirror. But not for the face, for the heart. Ira leaned in. Inside, she saw the village, the old bridge, her childhood home, her mother singing by the hearth. And then Alan, as he was before, laughing, running through wheat fields, holding her hand when the thunder scared her. Tears welled in her eyes. I forgot how much I missed it all. That's why the path returns, Alan said, to remind us. The light of the lantern dimmed slightly, a signal. It's time, he said. Ira stood, turning to him. Will I see you again? Yes, he said. In every rain, in every quiet place where love walks without fear. She nodded. And then the world shimmered, the glade faded, the door closed behind her, and she was back standing ankle-deep in the lake, under the moonlight. The lantern in her hand was dark now, but her heart glowed. She walked home without looking back. And that night, as the rain returned soft as breath, Ira dreamed not of loss, but of return. And yet sometimes the rain stays hidden, like a shy child, afraid to show its face. Even then, it nourishes the earth, whispering tales to the roots and filling streams that run deeper than they seem. When the sun returns, the world bursts forth with life. Flowers raise their heads in silent thanks to the rain, drinking deep, growing tall. Birds sing praises to the skies, but Ira knows the truth. She understands that the rain, like magic, like memory, is all around us. We just have to open our eyes and hearts to see it. Sometimes it's in a glistening spiderweb strung between two blades of grass. Sometimes in the dewdrops clinging to a leaf's edge. Sometimes in the way the earth smells after a storm. Or in the quiet strength of a towering tree, rooted deep in the waterless ground. She feels it in her chest, a wellspring rising, steady and sure. For Ira, the days after the bridge had been long, the laughter of children playing by the stream, the creak of the old willow under the summer sun, the scent of herbs drying in the loft, all of it whispered of Alan, of the path, of the rain. She woke each morning with a start, half expecting to find the familiar weight of his hand in hers, half expecting the sunlight to reveal the faint imprint of his form beside her on the rough-hewn planks of her bed. She found neither, but something remained, a warmth that lingered, a love that deepened even in absence. A promise that echoed in the chambers of her heart. Every time the wind shifted, carrying the scent of rain, or the sound of a distant stream, or when the moonlight painted the fields. In silver she would rise, drawn to the edge of the village, to the weathered stone of the bridge, where she would stand for hours, not weeping, but waiting. Waiting for the rustle of leaves to speak his name, waiting for the murmur of the stream to tell his tale, waiting for the sky to open and release him back into her arms. Then came the day when the bridge shimmered, not with dew, but with memory. And Ira, guided by the whisper of the willow and the call of her aching heart, returned to the place where paths diverged and echoes lingered, to the place where rain sang its ancient song. This place, born of water and sky, where the veil between worlds is spun, as fine as spider silk. Here she found him again, not in the tapestry of moonlight or the silvered mist of dawn, but in the depths of her own soul, where the light of love refused to be extinguished. Because the rain always returns, Ira whispered, knowing that their love story, like the cycle of the seasons, would continue on, ever changing, ever enduring. When the rain fell, it whispered against rooftops, danced through gutters, and painted the windows in shimmering trails. It fell for 3 days and nights. When the rain fell, it sounded like the world was sighing. It was the longest sigh Ira had ever heard. The village felt suspended during the rain. The usually bustling marketplace was empty. Stalls overflowed with unattended wares. Doors hung open, revealing vacant rooms. Children stayed tucked beneath blankets. Cats curled beneath carts, and the dogs that normally barked greetings at passers-by were silent. Even the river seemed to hold its breath, the current slowing until it mirrored the hushed footsteps that pattered on the cobblestones. Ira watched from her window as the rain fell. She watched the river turn from shallow slate to stormy gray to inky black. And in the third day of the deluge, she heard things. Distant chimes and hushed footsteps. And sometimes, weaving in the downpour like threads of silver, she heard her brother's laughter. She had not told anyone about the lake or the hidden stair. Not yet, but the lantern she kept by her window had begun to glow faintly at night, as if it remembered something she didn't. It wasn't a bright glow, more like the moonlight trying to push through a thick layer of fog. Still, when she lifted her chin, the light brushed her eyelids with gooseflesh and whispers, promising secrets if she would only listen. On the fourth morning, the rain had not yet stopped, but the sky above had cleared to reveal a sky the color of pewter. The clouds were scudding, high and fast, driven by a wind that had teeth. It was a sharp, clean smell, like the air after a storm, and the world felt washed, stripped bare. Rainwater dripped from the eaves, carrying the scent of wet pine. Birds called insistently from the trees lining the horizon. And as the dawn deepened, shafts of sunlight pierced the mist. Then, as if it had been waiting for this moment, an envelope appeared at her door. There was no knock, no sound, just a wax seal, shaped like a crescent moon, and an address written in ink that shimmered like water in sunlight. To the one who followed the rain, the words seemed to dance before her eyes. Slowly she unfolded the paper and read, "The clockmaker remembers what the lake forgets. Seek him at dusk." And just as quickly as it had come, the envelope was gone, leaving nothing but the words and their promise. A promise that set her heart racing and made her fingers tremble. Everyone in the village knew of the clockmaker. His house was the last before the woods, an ancient tower with chipped gears hanging from the eaves like wind chimes, and a strange ticking that echoed through the moss-covered walls, even when the wind was still. Few, however, had ever spoken to him. Most believed him to be older than time. Others claimed he hadn't aged in 30 years. That evening, Ira went. The path to the clockmaker's house wound between rain-slicked stones and mossy tree roots. The trees here whispered louder than usual, as if they knew she was coming. Her boots squelched softly with each step. Above, the moon began to rise, half hidden, half watching. She reached the tower just as the sky turned indigo, and the door creaked open before she could knock. "Come in," said a voice that was deep and precise, like a chime struck just once. The workshop smelled of cedar and oil, and clocks of every kind lined the walls. Grandfather clocks, cuckoo clocks, pocket watches, sand timers. Some ticked slowly, some not at all. Yet, the room pulsed with rhythm. The clockmaker stood by the hearth. He was tall and lean with silver hair pulled into a braid and spectacles that shimmered like polished rain. His eyes, behind the lenses, were deep-set and still. He studied her. "You've walked the moonlit path and seen what most never dare." Ira nodded, silent. He turned, walking toward a workbench where a glass dome rested on a velvet cloth. And inside, a strange device, a clock, but not like any she'd seen. Its hands spun slowly backwards, and inside the gears floated droplets of water, suspended mid-air, never falling. "This," he said, "is the rainkeeper. It listens to time, but only time that was felt. Grief, joy, longing. It records the moments that left echoes." He looked at her again. "Your lantern glows because you carry an echo. A powerful one. Your love for your brother. Your courage on the path. That light isn't from another world. It's from you." Ira swallowed. "But the dreams, the place beneath the lake, were they real?" "All real things begin as dreams," he said gently. "And some dreams live longer than lifetimes." He tapped the rainkeeper. "But memory alone is not enough. The path is waking again. Not just for you, for others. And not all who walk it do so in love." Ira frowned. "What do you mean?" The clockmaker stepped aside and opened a wooden drawer. Inside lay a stone, smooth, dark, and humming with faint silver veins. "This fell from the lake's center 2 nights ago," he said. "It holds the opposite of your lantern. Not memory, but forgetting. Someone seeks to use it to erase what was walked, to hide the path He placed the stone into her palm. It felt cold, heavy, and somehow wrong, like it didn't belong in this world. You were chosen because you remembered, the clockmaker said. Now you must protect what you remember before someone builds a path made only of silence. Ira looked up sharply, but the clockmaker only shook his head. They walk behind shadows. Their name isn't known, but when the rain falls in reverse, you'll know they've come. She stayed a moment longer, listening to the ticking around her. The sound felt less like time passing and more like something waiting. As she turned to leave, he handed her a watch, old, brass, and worn. It belonged to Alan, he said softly. He left it here once. Said you'd come looking for it someday. Ira clutched it to her chest. The rain met her at the door again. Softer now, but different. It no longer fell in a straight line. It curved slightly, like it was circling back, returning to something. And as she walked home, under its quiet hush, the stone in her pocket grew colder, the lantern dimmer, and the clock in her hand ticked once, then stopped. Days later, the sun broke through the clouds, and for the first time since the deluge, Ira saw the river running clearly before her. It tumbled over stones, chasing the retreating rain, sparkling with newfound energy. As she watched, a lone water strider skimmed across the surface, leaving ripples in its wake. And somewhere in the trees, a bird sang out, clear and sweet. That afternoon, Ira walked to the market, the village still drowsy with sleep. She ducked under a canvas awning, entering a shop filled with herbs, dried flowers, and bundles of twine. An old woman, with eyes like polished amber, looked up from a mortar and pestle. "Alan," she greeted, smiling. "You're awake at last. The rain has passed, but its song lingers in the air. Do you hear it?" Ira nodded, though she couldn't hear anything but the distant caw of a crow. "There are echoes here, too, aren't there?" the woman said, gesturing to the shelves laden with trinkets and bottles. "Each thing that's touched these hands leaves a trace. Each story whispered here leaves a note in the air." Ira stepped closer, inhaling deeply. It was the scent of rain-soaked earth, old wood, and a hint of something metallic, blood. Beneath it all, something else pricked at her senses, a faint, familiar echo. She strained to listen. "Do you seek something?" the woman asked, her gaze steady. Ira jumped slightly. I thought I heard my brother. Was there music here yesterday?" The woman's smile faded. "Music?" Then she sighed, her shoulders slumping. "No, just memories, echoes that linger, hoping to be heard. When the rain falls, they sing the loudest." Ira wanted to ask more, but the old woman looked tired, and the shop suddenly felt too small, the air too thick. So Ira paid for a loaf of bread and hurried away, clutching the bread close as if it might crumble to dust. She spent the rest of the day walking, the river her guide, and came upon a clearing she had never seen before. In the middle stood a young oak, its branches reaching up like supplicating arms. Beneath it lay a circle of smooth stones, and in the center, a pedestal. On it, a lantern shaped exactly like the one she kept by her window, except this one glowed faintly, even in the daylight. As she approached, the light flickered, casting dancing shadows on the surrounding trees. The next morning, Ira woke to silence. No birdsong, no breeze, only a stillness that prickled her skin. She raced to the window, peering out. The sky was a bruised purple, the clouds scudding in unnatural haste. The river had become a raging torrent, and from the east, a wind rose, snatching at the trees. The leaves writhed and twisted, whispering urgently. As the sky darkened, the rain began to fall, but it wasn't the gentle drumming she had grown accustomed to. This was a hard, insistent hammering. The lantern's glow by her window flared, then dimmed as if struggling against the onslaught. Then a crash of thunder split the sky, and when the next bolt of lightning illuminated the world, she saw them. They were racing across the fields from the east, silhouetted against the angry sky. Their laughter was harsh, discordant, devoid of joy. The rain intensified, swirling around their feet as they ran, growing brighter, busier, faster. The river swelled, threatening to spill over its banks, and the rain carried the sound of breaking glass, the scrape of metal on stone, and the echo of a name she knew well. When the rain fell in reverse, you'd know they were coming. Ira rushed to the old clockmaker's house, but it was gone. In its place stood a young oak, its branches reaching up like supplicating arms. And beneath it, a circle of smooth stones and a pedestal with a lantern shaped exactly like the one she kept by her window. Except this one glowed faintly, even in the daylight. This is a tale about loss and love, about sacrifice and remembering. You know, one of those epic fantasy things. Our story begins with a young girl who lives in a small village, nestled among whispering trees and overlooking a placid lake. It's a peaceful existence until one day when everything changes. Our heroine, we learn her name is Ira, notices something peculiar. Time itself seems to be running backward in her town. People are reliving their days, performing actions they've already done, saying words they've already spoken. The very essence of their lives is unwinding before their eyes. And it's not just the people. The environment is affected, too. Rivers are flowing upstream, birds are flying in reverse, and leaves are falling back onto branches. It's a town stuck in a time loop, reliving the same day over and over, except nobody seems to remember. Amidst this perplexing chaos, a mysterious bell tolls, echoing through the village. And Ira realizes that this is not just a random phenomenon. This is happening because of the lack of memory. See, there's this curse in this town where people forget everything after a single day. They wake up every morning with no recollection of the previous day or the ones before that, and they have to rediscover who they are, what they do, who their loved ones are, all over again. This creates a sort of Groundhog Day situation, except with no awareness of the repetition. It's like a broken record, skipping on the same track without anyone knowing. Now, our protagonist, Ira, lives in this village, and unlike others, she remembers. She remembers what happened yesterday, last week, even years ago. She carries the burden of these memories, not only for herself, but for everyone else. In fact, she has this rainkeeper stone that helps her keep track of time and remember everything. She's also wearing an antique watch that belonged to her mother, which hasn't ticked in the longest time. However, when the time comes, it will tick again, but only for her. It's a family heirloom that helps her to remember. Meanwhile, the story also revolves around another character named Alan. We don't meet him yet, but we know that he is important to Ira and to the overall plot. So he's off somewhere looking for her, probably not knowing that she's already closer than he thinks. So as the town is caught in this time loop, people are literally living their last moments, repeatedly, without realizing it. It's sad, it's heartbreaking, but most of all, it's confusing. As days repeat themselves, people grow older, but their minds remain at the start of the cycle, unable to grasp the absurdity of their situation. They live, they die, and they relive it all over again. It's a never-ending cycle of birth, life, death, and rebirth. And it's up to our protagonist, Ira, to break the cycle. She knows that the only way to stop this unending loop is to find the source of the curse and break it. Her hope is that when the curse is broken, everyone's memories will return, bringing an end to this endless cycle. But breaking the curse isn't easy. It requires sacrifice, courage, and a deep understanding of oneself and others. As Ira embarks on her journey to break the curse, she must confront not only external obstacles, but also her inner demons. She struggles with feelings of loneliness, guilt, and despair as she witnesses the people of the village trapped in their own personal hells. She questions whether she can really make a difference and if it's even worth trying. But despite these challenges, she presses on, driven by the hope of restoring the village to its former glory and reuniting with the one she loves, Alan. As the story reaches its climax, Ira discovers the truth behind the curse and confronts the person responsible. She learns that the curse was created by someone who was once a part of the village. Someone who loved the village so much that they wanted to protect it from the pain and suffering of the outside world. But in doing so, they caused their own suffering and the suffering of everyone else. Ira understands that the only way to break the curse is to confront the person who created it and bring them back to the present moment. With the help of the few villagers who do remember, Ira is able to track down the person responsible for the curse. She confronts them and tries to convince them to undo the curse. But the person is consumed by their own pain and refuses to listen. Ira is forced to fight in order to protect those she cares about and to break the curse. But it's not just a physical battle. It's also a battle of wills and hearts. Ira must convince the person that there is hope for them yet, and that they don't have to be trapped in their own past forever. In the end, Ira is successful in her mission. The curse is broken, and the village is restored to its former glory. Everyone's memories return, and the villagers are able to move on with their lives. Ira and Alan are reunited, and they are finally able to live there happily ever after. But the story doesn't end there. It's actually pretty funny. After Ira breaks the curse, the villagers start to remember not only their past, but also who they want to be. Suddenly, the baker wants to be a musician. The cobbler wants to be a painter. The candlestick maker wants to be well, you get the picture. Everyone's priorities have shifted, and the village is thrown into a frenzy of activity as everyone tries to pursue their new dreams. Ira and Alan look at each other and burst out laughing. They realize that while breaking the curse was important, it also brought a whole new set of problems. But hey, who needs peace and quiet when you've got existential crises, right? And that's the story. Now, here's the thing. I didn't really plan any of that. I just kind of made it up as I went along. What I did have planned, though, was the ending. Because, as I wrote this little tale, I couldn't help but think of one particular fandom. The fandom of Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. If you're unfamiliar with it, basically there's a lot of time travel, reincarnation, and memory issues going on, especially in the last 2 books. And some readers were like, hey, what if Rowan and Elena had a daughter? And I was like, oh my God, yes. So I wrote this little story about Ira, who's Elena, and Rowan's daughter, and the curse that's affecting her town, which is basically a metaphor for her parents' memories. I figured it'd be fun to put some characters from the series into a story, even if it's not technically canon. And I thought, hey, maybe if I write this story, someone from the fandom might read it and enjoy it. Who knows, maybe it'll become part of the fandom. And if it does, then my work here is done. Now, we are back. We're back. This book started off so good, and then it took a nosedive, and somehow they righted the ship. I have no clue how. So last episode we talked about how our dear friend Little Morrigan was captured and taken to the bone carver by a couple shady-ass elves. This episode picks up right after that. So instead of recap, let's just go ahead and jump into it, because we got some explaining to do. See, last episode I called these guys Riverman, because of the whole river markings thing going on. But it turns out they're actually river sisters. See, that horn they use to traverse the rivers is an actual artifact that chooses its user based on who's worthy. Now, since they're apparently worthy, it chose both of them. The artifact was hidden in the lake my King Rowan and Queen Arobin made a deal over. You remember that deal? Yeah, I can't believe we're doing that either. But it's important to the plot, so we gotta do it. So basically, the Horn Sisters, whose name is also River Sister, River Mark, and River Healer, well, they blow that horn, which is gonna make the river rise up and cover the whole city. That's the whole point of blowing that horn. They're gonna destroy everything that was built on the ruins of the old town. See, that's what happened to the previous king. He tried to build a new city on top of the old town, which is considered a sacred site. Like, come on, man, read the room. Anyway, the king gets mad, makes a bunch of angry threats, but he can't stop them because it's already prophesied. All he can do is run away. In the meantime, a dude named Eldred, who has been training for literally his entire life to defeat the bone carver, wakes up in the middle of the night and goes to check out the commotion. He gets to the docks and finds River Sisters waiting for him. They tell him about the prophecy and ask him if he'll help them. But unfortunately, he's all, nah, and tries to attack them. River Sisters does get away, but River Mark sacrifices herself and allows River Healer and Elder Red to escape. Meanwhile, the Horn Sisters were able to take the king's son captive because they already marked him with their magic. That way, when the horn's blown, He will survive the flood and become the new king. At least that's their plan. After taking out the king's son, they're finally ready to blow that horn. They blow it and the river rises. Okay, so we've got two stories happening. On one side, we have Ira and Alan, and over on the other side, we have the Horn Sisters, the king, Eldred, and the prince. And now it's time for a little crossover episode. Our boy Alan finally gets to finish his round of golf, which is very exciting, but it's cut short by the sound of drums and chanting. This isn't the first time he's heard this, so you know he has to pay attention. He tells Ira to wait here while he goes to check it out. As he goes, Ira hears the sound as well and decides to follow him. And looky here, the trees part, just like the Red Sea, and let our favorite Ginger in, and she sees something crazy. The river is rising. Like seriously, the water level is rising so quickly that the land is getting completely flooded. But that's not all. There's a giant-ass door in the ground, and it's opening up, and what comes out of it is probably my favorite creature in the series. What you think? Cute, right? Well, turns out they're more than just cute. They're actually super helpful and kind and empathetic, and they immediately start asking questions. And Alan is like, hi. So they take him down into the ground to meet their queen, and the queen asks Alan why the world is afraid of their kind. He says, well, your kind destroys cities and stuff. She says, that's not true. Then he says, you sure? Then she says, yep. Then he says, cool. And then he gets abducted by the king. See, when the king saw Alan, he thought that Alan was actually Dorian. You see, because of the whole curse thing, Dorian's hair went white and his eyes turned green, and he looks totally different, and the king doesn't know that. And he takes Alan back to the palace. But it's too late because the Horn Sisters have already fled and blown that damn horn. The new king is furious. He wants answers. He wants to know who this stranger is and how he snuck into the palace. No one knows. They're all freaking out. And the new king is so pissed that he sends his elite guard to kill this stranger. Unfortunately, they fail. Turns out our boy Alan is stronger than he looks. Then we cut back over to Ira, who is searching for Alan and runs into Manon and the crew. Turns out Manon has no clue where Alan is, but she thinks she might know how to find the Horn Sisters. So she offers to show Ira where they went, back at the palace. The new king is throwing a tantrum and refusing to leave his chambers. Meanwhile, his counselors are trying to figure out what to do about this flooding situation. The water is literally creeping up the walls, and they have no clue how to stop it. Finally, the king comes out and overhears them talking, and he learns that the Horn Sisters used a horn that belonged to the old king to raise the river. So he immediately goes to his royal grimoire, pulls out the spell to lower the river, and boom, problem solved. It's as easy as that. Now, meanwhile, somewhere else, Alina, who is being guarded by two hot elves, is thinking about how much she hates being helpless. Then she starts glowing red, which freaks out the guards, so they untie her and send her to go check on the king. And she finds him reading his grimoire, and is like, hey, what's up? He tells her about the Horn Sisters, and she's like, oh yeah, them. She says, hey, maybe they're not so bad. They could be good for business. He's like, Then she's like, let's go see them. So the two of them get on a horse and ride off to find the Horn Sisters. Ira and Manon finally arrive at the Lake District, and Ira immediately gets to work on calling up the Rainkeeper. Ira calls up the Rainkeeper, and it works. Then she spends some time with her old friends, catching up, having some laughs. Then she goes to sleep and dreams of her mother. Manon shows up to Elena's party, and the two of them finally get to talk, which is nice. But it's also awkward because they haven't seen each other in a really long time. While they're talking, the Horn Sisters show up with their prisoners. Rowan and Lorcan try to attack the Horn Sisters, but they counter with their magic. And they're like, nope, you're coming with us. Then Elena steps in and saves the day because she bought off the Horn Sisters earlier. The Horn Sisters want to trade Elena for the king, but Elena is all as if, and then she uses her magic to charm the Horn Sisters into blowing the horn again. And this time they do it exactly how Elena wants them to. While all this is going on, Ira is still dreaming. Her mother appears to her and gives her a cryptic warning, telling her to listen to the song the world is singing. In response to the warning, Ira gets up and walks to the window. It's raining, and that's it for this episode. Bye. The lanterns floated still, long after the music faded, long after the villagers returned to their hearths and dreams. They drifted soft spheres of light on the dark lake, each holding a flame, a wish, a memory. The water, calm and unbroken, carried them not with current, but with intention, as if it knew where to take them. Ira and Alan remained at the water's edge. They said nothing for a long time. Then Alan spoke. "It's not done, is it?" "No," Ira said, barely above a whisper. "Something else is waking." He nodded. "I can feel it, like a second breath, waiting." The sky above was cloudless, but the stars blinked restlessly as if shifting in some unseen wind. The trees at the edge of the forest murmured, low and uneasy. The twisted tree, the one that had listened, stood darker than the others now, casting no shadow despite the moonlight. And then something happened. One of the lanterns, the one Ira had lit, veered suddenly off course. Not by breeze, not by touch, but by pull. It drifted toward the far end of the lake, where the water grew thick with mist and reflection folded in on itself. The lantern flickered once, then vanished into the fog. Without a word, Ira stepped into the wooden boat, moored nearby, a boat no one had used in years. Its sides cracked and marked with ivy. Alan joined her, and together they pushed off. The oars barely touched the water. The lake carried them. No sound but the dip of wood and the hush of their breath. The mist thickened. And then, as if the lake itself had opened, they entered a place beneath reflection where the world turned silver and still, and lanterns floated upward from below, not burning, but glowing with memory. Ira gasped. A sky beneath the water. A mirror realm. And thereat, its center, a tower of glass, rising from the depths like a single note held too long. Inside it, light, swirling, dancing, fading. They docked at its edge. Alan reached for the tower's curved handle. It opened like a sigh. Inside, the walls shimmered with images, echoes of people, moments, lives, villagers, children, the clockmaker as a young man, Alan as a boy, their mother, humming by candlelight, and in the center, a pedestal, on it, the lantern that had vanished. Its flame pulsed with golden rhythm, and next to it sat a folded note. Ira picked it up. The handwriting was her own, but she had never written it. "One day, you'll remember what's coming before it arrives. One day, this light will lead others not to the past, but to what comes after. Leave the lantern. It's not yours anymore." She stared at it and understood. The path wasn't just for her and Alan. It wasn't even just for those who remembered. It was for those still searching, the ones not yet born into longing, the ones who would need light to find their way forward. "This is the last place," Alan said softly. Ira nodded, and the first. She placed the lantern back on the pedestal. Its light expanded, not blinding, but endless. And for a moment, Ira saw everything. The village in spring. The chapel bells ringing forward again. Children walking paths their parents had feared. Rain falling without silence. Bridges appearing in places no one remembered building. And beyond it all, the path continuing, not through woods or dreams, but through people. Memory had taken root. The mist began to lift. The tower dissolved into air. And they were back in the boat, drifting silently through a clear lake under a sky full of stars. The lanterns on the surface were gone, but in every house a candle had been lit. They returned to the village in silence. At the clockmaker's tower, Ira left the brass watch at the doorstep. It no longer ticked, but it had done what it was meant to do. On the chapel door, she carved a single word, "Remember." And that night, for the first time in many, many years, there was no rain, only stillness, but the song remained. Not in the sky, not on the rooftops, but in the hearts of those who had once forgotten how to listen. Alan leaned against the rough bark of an ancient oak, his gaze fixed on the lake. Beside him, Rowan shifted, his wolf ears perked. "They are close," he murmured, more to himself than anyone. For days, The two of them had tracked the source of an encroaching darkness, a growing unease that threatened to consume the fragile peace of Aurelia. Rowan, with his wolf's keen senses, had felt it first, a discordant note in the symphony of nature. Alan, bound to the land by both blood and duty, had recognized the danger it posed. United by their love for the fairy and the human lands, they had journeyed across rivers and over mountains to find its source. And now here they were, at the edge of a tranquil lake, its surface mirroring the star-studded sky. Yet something about it disturbed Rowan deeply. He whined, pawing the ground. Alan, attuned to his mate's anxieties, placed a comforting hand on his head. "I know, Rowan," he whispered, his voice hoarse with fatigue. "But we must rest now. In the morning, we will go to the bottom of this." As the night deepened, the forest around them stirred with unease. The leaves in the trees rustled ominously, and the very stones seemed to murmur with hidden fears. But Alan, drawing strength from Rowan's unwavering presence, slept soundly. In the morning, when the sun painted the sky with hues of gold and rose, they rose, refreshed and ready to face whatever darkness awaited them. The tranquility of the lake was gone. Storm clouds gathered overhead, and the water churned restlessly. "It is here," Rowan growled, his eyes flashing with primal fear. Without hesitation, they plunged into the icy depths, the cold biting at their skin. But neither the frigid temperature nor the growing darkness could dampen their determination. As they descended, the murky green water closed over them, enveloping them in its chilling embrace. But their bond, forged in love and mutual respect, held firm. Together, they faced the unknown, their courage a beacon in the murky depths. Deep within the lake's heart, they found the source of the disturbance, an unnatural coldness that seemed to suck the warmth from everything around it. It was a vortex of pure darkness, devoid of life and light. The sight sent a chill down Alan's spine, but he pressed on, compelled by an instinct he couldn't understand. The darkness reached out, tendrils of black energy grasping at him, trying to pull him into its suffocating depths. Fear threatened to overwhelm him, but then he felt Rowan's presence beside him, strong and reassuring. With a surge of adrenaline, he fought against the darkness, his determination fueling his strength. As the battle raged within the icy depths, the world around them trembled. The lake's surface churned violently, mirroring the turmoil in their hearts. The darkness was ancient and powerful, but so was their love for each other and their world. With a final burst of energy, they managed to banish the darkness back into the swirling vortex that had birthed it. The victory was hard-won, but the immediate aftermath was even more perilous. The collapsing vortex threatened to drag them down into its chaotic maelstrom. But they clung to each other, the bond anchoring them amidst the chaos. They surfaced, gasping for breath, their bodies aching from the struggle. Looking back at the lake, they saw that the storm had passed, leaving behind a surface as still and reflective as glass. The sky, once heavy with darkness, was now a canvas of brilliant blue, dotted with fluffy white clouds. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves in the surrounding trees, creating a soothing melody that echoed across the tranquil water. Birds sang merrily in the branches, their sweet songs adding a harmonious tune to the symphony of nature. Alan and Rowan, battered but triumphant, watched in awe. They had saved their world once again, but they knew that the fight for balance between light and dark was eternal. So they turned and walked away from the lake, side by side, ready to face whatever new challenges lay ahead. Their love and unity, forged in the fires of adversity, would guide them through the darkness, ensuring that the light would always prevail. The rain did not return for many days, and when it did, it was not the same. It came not from storm clouds or sky, but from within, the kind of rain that lives in the heart, gentle and knowing. It fell quietly in the minds of those who had walked through sorrow, who now tended their memories like lanterns in a long hallway. In the village, the world softened. The twisted tree by the woods had bloomed, not with leaves, but with tiny feathers of silver light, drifting from its branches like fragments of forgotten songs. The clockmaker came each morning to sit beneath it, a journal in his lap, listening not for ticking, but for silence shaped by meaning. Alan had taken to teaching the village children how to read starlight. He said the constellations had begun to shift, that the sky was telling stories again. And Ira watched. She did not speak of the glass tower beneath the lake, nor of the note she never remembered writing. She had made peace with not knowing. Some truths are too large to carry. They carry you instead. It was on the 7th morning, with mist curling gently across the valley, that the child arrived. No one knew her name. She came barefoot, cloakless, her hair damp with dew. Her eyes held the quiet of someone who had already seen the end of something, and now stood at the beginning again. She walked straight to the old moonlit path, past the bridge, past the place where the willow once stood. She paused by the blackened tree, touched its bark gently, and then turned to the villagers gathered behind her. "I heard a song," she said, her voice soft but clear. "In my dream, it told me to walk." No one stopped her, because they had learned finally that the path chose its own, and sometimes it walked with you. Ira stepped forward, placing her hand on the girl's shoulder. "You don't need to be afraid." "I'm not," the child said. "I just want to remember." Ira's eyes welled. She knelt, pressing a small token into the girl's hand. A stone etched with a spiralan echo of the rainkeeper, carved from memory, not forgetting. The girl closed her fingers around it. Then she stepped onto the path, and it glowed, not with silver this time, but with gold, the color of warmth, of sunrise, of stories just beginning. Each step she took awakened the ground behind her, and with every footprint, small flowers began to bloom. Not wildflowers, not of this world, but flowers made of starlight and music, fragile and shining like they had grown from the rain itself. The child did not look back, not because she had forgotten, but because she believed. Ira stood at the edge of the village, her shawl wrapped around her shoulders, Alan beside her. The others gathered silently, each feeling something open within them, something they had kept closed for far too long. And in that moment, they all knew. The path no longer needed bridges or bells, no longer needed lanterns or rain. It was alive now. It would appear when it was needed. It would find those who were listening. It would walk itself. Alan reached out, touching one of the luminous blossoms. "It is so beautiful," he whispered. He looked up at the sky, a smile gracing his lips. For the first time in a long while, he felt the wind against his face, smelled the earth after rain, saw the sunlight slant through ancient trees. Life thrummed around him, and as the sound of children's laughter drifted from the village, he knew they were remembering, too. Remembering what it meant to live, to hope, to dream. Remembering the stories they had almost forgotten. Their faces, etched with lines of grief, now softened in the golden light. The young woman who had been the fire in their midst, even in her absence, sat by the river, watching it flow. Her hair, the color of sunset, cascaded down her back, catching the light as she leaned forward. Her fingers trailed in the water, sending ripples dancing downstream. Lost in thought, she seemed oblivious to the world around her, yet a part of it all. For though her memories may have slipped away, the river held them, weaving them into its currents. With each passing moment, it carried her further from the past, further towards understanding. Then a voice, like the chime of distant bells, broke through her thoughts. Turning, she saw him standing on the bank above her, his presence a beacon in the fading light. He descended the slope, his steps sure, his eyes reflecting the colors of the setting sun. As he drew closer, she saw not only the man she had loved, but the man she had lost. The one who had walked away from the village, from her, from everything they had known. His return, a silent promise whispered on the wind. Hope flickered within her, fragile as a newborn star, yet burning with the strength of 1,000 suns. Alan reached her, his gaze unwavering. No words were spoken, yet worlds were exchanged in the depths of their eyes. He offered her his hand, not as a lord to his lady, but as an equal to an equal, as one who understood the depths of loss and the heights of devotion. Together, they retraced the steps of their shared past, each footfall echoing with meaning. The river flowed on, its melody a constant in their symphony of emotions. As twilight deepened, They reached a meadow where their love had bloomed under the watchful gaze of the ancient oak. There, amidst the fading light, he spoke, his voice rough with emotion. The words tumbled forth, halting at first, then flowing like the river they had followed. He confessed his struggles, the battles fought and lost, the loneliness endured, the longing for home and her that had driven him back. Each syllable resonated with truth, echoing the unspoken yearnings of her heart. She listened, her gaze fixed on the rippling water, tears glistening in her eyes. When he paused, she turned, her face a mirror of his pain, her voice trembling with unshed tears. She poured out her own story, the weight of responsibility, the fear of abandonment, the desperate hope that had sustained her through the darkest nights. Their words wove a tapestry of love, loss, and longing, a testament to the enduring power of the heart. He stepped closer, his eyes searching hers, and she knew he understood, truly understood the labyrinth of her soul. Reaching out, he cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. In that intimate space, their love rekindled, stronger now, tempered by trials and illuminated by shared understanding. And as the stars emerged, one by one, they clung to each other, finding solace in the silent symphony of the night. Beneath the canopy of stars, Ira stood, her heart overflowing with a mixture of emotions. Before her lay the village, bathed in the ethereal glow of twilight, its inhabitants gathered in the central plaza. The sight stirred memories of happier times, of festivals and gatherings that had once filled this place with laughter and song. Now, however, a different kind of magic pervaded the air, a palpable energy that hummed with anticipation. At the center of the plaza, Alan and Laura stood hand in hand, their figures silhouetted against the fading light. The villagers, their faces etched with hope and longing, awaited their return. Alan, his gaze unwavering, addressed his people. His voice, though rough with emotion, carried over the hushed crowd. He spoke of their journey, of the trials they had faced, of the dreams they had held on to, and of the belief that had sustained them through the darkness. His words were a balm to their souls, soothing the wounds of the past, reminding them of the strength that lay dormant within. Beside him, Laura nodded, her eyes shining with determination. She, too, had a message to convey, a promise to fulfill. She pledged to stand by Alan's side, to support him in his endeavors, and to guide their people towards a new dawn. Her presence, a symbol of unity and resilience, bolstered the spirits of those gathered before them. As their words echoed through the plaza, Ira felt a surge of pride mixed with apprehension. Pride in the strength of her brother and the unwavering spirit of her people. Apprehension about the challenges that lay ahead. Yet as she looked around, she saw not only weariness and sorrow, but also determination and hope. The villagers, inspired by Alan and Laurel's words, began to stir. They exchanged glances, hesitant at first, then with growing resolve. Slowly, they started to move, drawn together by an invisible force, their steps gaining confidence with each passing moment. They formed a circle, embracing the fading light, their bodies swaying gently, mirroring the rhythm of their hearts. And then, as if guided by an unseen hand, they began to dance. Ira watched, mesmerized, as the plaza transformed into a swirling kaleidoscope of movement and emotion. The villagers, young and old, male and female, danced with abandon, their steps echoing the trials they had endured and the hope that now filled their souls. Laughter mingled with tears, and the melody of their joy echoed through the twilight. It was a celebration of life, of love, and of the indomitable spirit that resided within them all. As the dance reached its crescendo, Ira felt a sense of release, a catharsis that washed over her like a tidal wave. It was as if the weight of their collective grief had finally lifted, replaced by a shared euphoria. In that moment, she knew that they were not merely dancing, they were healing, mending the fractured pieces of their souls and weaving them back together. They were creating a new narrative, one that embraced their pain, acknowledged their losses, yet ultimately celebrated their survival and their unyielding hope. And then, as suddenly as it began, the dance ended. The villagers, their bodies flushed with exertion and emotion, stood still, their breaths mingling with the soft evening breeze. A profound silence descended upon the plaza, broken only by the distant murmur of crickets. The fading light cast long shadows, stretching and twisting like phantoms from another realm. Yet despite the stillness, a tangible energy pulsed through the space between them, a silent testament to the power of their shared experience. Breaking the silence, Alan stepped forward. His eyes, shining with unshed tears, scanned the faces of his people. Loralee stood beside him, her hand resting on his arm, her gaze radiating empathy and understanding. They were not merely leaders, they were beacons of hope, guiding their people through the darkest of nights. Taking a deep breath, Alan began to speak, his voice hoarse with emotion. He acknowledged the pain they had endured, the losses they had suffered, and the scars that would forever remain. But he also spoke of resilience, of the unbreakable bonds of family and community, and of the unwavering belief in a brighter tomorrow. His words hung in the air, resonating with the deepest yearnings of their hearts. Beside him, Laura nodded, her voice soft yet resolute. She affirmed Alan's words, adding her own touch of compassion and understanding. She spoke of healing, of the need to tend to both their wounds and their dreams, and of the importance of unity in the face of adversity. Her presence, a soothing balm, calmed the raw nerves of their collective trauma. As they spoke, the villagers stirred, their faces etched with a mixture of grief and determination. They murmured among themselves, sharing stories, offering words of comfort and strength. The plaza, once a symbol of their unity, had now become a sanctuary of shared healing, a place where broken hearts could mend and spirits could be lifted. In my book, Children of Blood and Bone, the very first line of the story is, "The path shimmered like dawn turned a thread." Now, I'm a pantser. I don't plan my books out ahead of time. But one of the few things I did know when I started writing this story was that I wanted to open it with a piece of writing that captured the essence of the whole book. So I wrote that sentence and I circled it because I knew that it symbolized so many different things that were going to be important to the story. The thread, the path, the weaving together of these two character stories. The shimmer, how even in darkness, there can still be glimmers of magic and beauty, and the way that their cultures both value and shun magic. And finally, the idea of dawn, which symbolizes beginnings, and also the blood-colored sky that becomes an omen of death. This scene is not just about world building, it's about character development too. It introduces us to our protagonist, who we meet here as a child, and gives us a glimpse of her power and of the world she lives in. I didn't want to info dump on the reader. Instead, I wanted to drop the reader right into Zelly's experience and allow them to discover alongside her as she discovers the magical elements of the world. When I sit down to write a story, I usually start with a character or a setting or a single compelling image, and then I ask myself questions until I get a story. Who is this person? Why are they doing this? Why do they believe what they believe? Where does this take place? How did that come to be? What rules does this world have to follow? I focus on building a vivid setting that feels lived in by asking myself questions about it. Like, what kind of people live here? What kind of weather does this place have? What do the houses look like? What smells permeate the air? But a lot of my scenes also start with a single piece of writing, a piece of dialogue, an image, or sometimes even a piece of music that captures the feeling I want the rest of the scene to evoke. Sometimes I don't even know what the scene is going to look like or what's going to happen in it, but I have this feeling. So I start with the feeling, and then I ask myself questions until I get a scene. What would cause these characters to feel this way? What would make this scene feel this way? Let's take another example from Children of Blood and Bone. This is from the same chapter, but a little later on. I have this piece of writing. The forest did not loom, it opened. The trees, ancient and watchful, leaned back as if to give her room to pass. She did not look back, she did not slow. She was following something. Not a sound, not a shape, but a pull, like the first note of a lullaby you've heard in dreams but never learned to sing. Here, I had the image of the trees parting for Zella, and then the metaphor of the song, stuck in her dreams. I knew I wanted this section to be fast-paced and to have a sense of inevitability, like Zelly is on a path that she has to walk. And so the way I did that was to use short sentences and fragments. I put more dashes in than usual, and I used similes to convey how she experiences this journey. I love similes. They allow you to draw comparisons between two things that are otherwise completely dissimilar and reveal surprising truths about both of them. When I see the forest opening up for Zelly, I don't want to just tell the reader that. I want to show the reader that in a way that evokes how Zelly feels about it. So I say that the forest opens for her. It's almost as if the trees themselves are partying for her and making room for her to walk through. This builds up her power and establishes that she is important, that she belongs here. And it foreshadows that the natural world is on her side. Then she hears this pull, which is like the first note of a lullaby. And immediately I establish that this is a lullaby she knows but has forgotten. She recognizes this pull, this song, and it's calling to her, beckoning her toward something. She isn't sure what it is, but she trusts that it'll lead her to what she needs to do. She follows it instinctively. That raises questions. Where is she going? Where is this song leading her? And what does the song mean? This creates suspense and draws the reader further into the story. I am a big believer in the power of withholding information. If I give the reader everything they need to know, then they won't have to read any further to find out what happens next. But if I leave some blanks, then I engage the reader's imagination and curiosity, which makes them want to read further. And this brings me to my next element, which is atmosphere. Creating a strong atmosphere is key to drawing your reader into your story and making them feel what your character feels. In this passage, I use lots of sensory detail to build a dreamy, mysterious atmosphere that mirrors Zelly's state of mind. I describe the trees as ancient and watchful. I say that she walks beneath the hush of trees and soft birdsong. And I contrast that with the sudden appearance of the feather in the silence. These details not only move the plot forward, but they also create a mood. Think about it. Why does Zelly go to the forest? Because she wants to find something, some kind of proof of her powers. And she finds it. But it's not what she expected. She found a feather. There's no indication of where the feather came from or what it means, but she trusts its significance and follows it anyway. That decision sets the entire story in motion, and all because she found a feather. Feathers symbolize flight, freedom, transformation, and also fragility. And this feather glows faintly, gold and white. Gold often symbolizes magic, and the white suggests purity, innocence, and otherworldliness. So right off the bat, it has multiple layers of meaning. We don't know what it means yet, but we can intuit that it's important. And that's what makes this story exciting. Let's keep going. We pick up the pace now, and the scene changes. She steps into a great hall of sky and silence. Again, I want to establish this magical realism early on. I want to show, not tell the reader, that there is magic in this world. So instead of explaining it, I just show Zelly stepping into this fantastical realm. Again, I use similes and metaphors to show how Zelly experiences this journey. I say that the floor is made of light, that wind whispers without sound, and that the flame speaks in a voice made of all the things she loved and lost and never quite understood. And as she touches the feather, the world shimmers and dissolves around her. She goes from one fantastical realm to another. She travels through the power of her own belief. Her belief in herself, in her culture, in her magic. There is so much packed into this scene. She goes from a child afraid of losing her mother to a young woman embracing her heritage. We learn that Zelly is descended from kings and queens. We learn about the massacre of her people. And we learn that there is a war happening, and she is somehow at the center of it. If you're an aspiring writer, I challenge you to try this exercise for yourself. Think about the emotion you want your story to evoke. Is it hopeful? Is it tragic? Is it heart-wrenching? Is it triumphant? Let that feeling guide you. Take a piece of writing, a piece of dialogue, an image, or even a piece of music that embodies that feeling, and use it as a springboard to develop the rest of your scene. Ask yourself questions until you have a complete scene that moves your plot forward and develops your characters. And one final note on writing children's literature. Many people think that writing for children is easy. After all, children are simpler, right? Well, actually, I think writing for children is one of the hardest things you can do. Children are voracious readers. They have incredible imaginations, and they aren't afraid to ask difficult questions. That's why I always write the deepest, most meaningful stories I can and let my characters ask the big questions that resonate with me and hopefully with readers of all ages. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this excerpt from Children of Blood and Bone, and the lesson I prepared for you. And please join me next time for another wonderful journey into children's literature. The rain had stopped, but the forest still shimmered. Mist curled along the roots like breath returning to the earth. Leaves dripped not with water, but with memory. Its dropped falling as if it had something to say. And there, just beyond the gold-flecked clearing, the child knelt before the creature of woven rain. It slept beneath a canopy of silver vines, no larger than a lamb. Its body was made of something that moved like mist but shimmered like silk. Threads of starlight traced along its back. Its chest rose and fell in slow rhythm, glowing faintly with each breath, and nestled within the cradle of its paws was a single leaf glowing green, humming softly. The girl reached out. The creature did not wake, but the forest did. The trees leaned slightly inward. The moss pulsed with warmth. A distant hush fell across the glade, as if time itself paused to listen. The child's fingers brushed the leaf, and the world spoke. Not in thunder, not in wind, but in a whisper, carried by every branch, every blade of grass. The seed remembers. The path is no longer just walked. It listens now. It dreams. The leaf rose gently from the creature's paws and hovered before the child's heart. A low hum filled the air, not a song, but the memory of a song, the kind that had been sung once, long ago, and had waited to return. Then the creature stirred. Its eyes opened, pale blue, like rain clouds before a storm. It looked at the girl, not with surprise, but recognition, as if it had always known she would come. She whispered, "Are you?" The path. The creature blinked slowly. Then it stood not on legs, but on tendrils of mist and pressed its forehead gently to hers. And in that touch, she heard everything. The first time the rain touched a bridge, Ira's footsteps on the moonlit stones, Alan's laughter echoing through the forest, the flame's final whisper, the feather's silent song, and her own voice, years from now, calling others by name. The creature stepped back. The leaf in the air began to unfold once, twice until it was no longer a leaf, but a map made of light. Lines traced paths through sky and soil, showing not only where to go, but who to be. And in its center, a spiral, the same shape etched into the stone Ira once gave her. The child understood now. The path was no longer a place. It was becoming a being, alive, conscious, listening. And this creature woven of mist and memory was its heart. But hearts must be protected. The forest spoke again. The silence waits at the edges. Not all remember gently. Some seek to unwrite. The girl looked at the map. Several of the paths glowed warmly, but a few flickered, dimmed, curled like burnt paper. She looked at the creature, who watched her calmly. "I'm not ready," she said quietly, and the creature breathed once, slowly, and replied not in words, but in a feeling placed gently in her chest. The first time Rowan had laid eyes on the Fae, he'd been small enough to fit inside one of the giant's hands. To his 7-year-old self, the creature had been terrifying. All gnarled bark and drooping vines, smelling of damp earth and dying leaves. And then it had smiled, and Rowan had seen kindness in those ancient eyes and felt courage bloom in his chest. It was a feeling he hadn't realized he'd been missing. He'd never wanted to leave that glade. Even now, decades later, when he could call the forest his home, he found himself drawn to the clearing where he first met the white oak. Drawn to the stories it held in its rustling leaves and deep within its heartwood. Here, time felt different. The magic thrumming beneath the roots sang to the stars, older than any memory and deeper than any fear. And somewhere within that melody, Rowan could hear his own story waiting to be uncovered. Alan had run to the Whispering Glade more times than she could count. When her brother died, she cried out to the path, and the forest listened. When her father banished her, she ran until the trees embraced her as their own. When her friends were lost, she called to the spirits of the woods, and they brought her answers. This place was her sanctuary, her solace. The one place where she could shed the weight of her crown and just be Alan Ashriver, Galathinius, heir to the Northern Territories and Queen of Terrasen. For here, even queens could find peace. Manon had stumbled upon the Whispering Glade by accident, her wolf mount having taken her off trail. The clearing had appeared before her like a forgotten dream, beautiful and haunting, and she'd felt compelled to kneel before the white oak, as if it were an altar. It had been centuries since a black beak had prayed, but in this sacred place, where the veil between worlds was thin and memories lingered like ghosts, she'd whispered her grief to the roots, and the tree had listened. In return, it had shown her a vision of a grandmother, strong and proud, reminding her who she was and what she had to do. The vision had sent Manon back to her life with a renewed sense of purpose, a purpose that would lead her to the very heart of the forest, to the gateway between worlds hidden within the white oak. Lysandra was drawn to the glade by the sound of singing. At first, she'd thought it was a trick of her five senses, for how could music echo in a place without wind? Yet there it was, a haunting melody woven from moonlight and mist. And then she saw him. He was just a boy, no older than 10 summers, with hair like spun gold and eyes that shone like stars. And he was dancing, not in some frenzied way, but with a grace that seemed otherworldly. Lysandra watched, mesmerized, as he moved, and she heard the forest's song rise in harmony with his steps. It was an ancient tune, older than the oldest tree and wilder than the untamed sea. And as the music swelled, so did the power around them, reaching a crescendo as the boy spun and leaped. Suddenly, he stopped, his head snapped up, his eyes blazing with newfound fire. He looked at Lysandra, and for a moment, she saw the ancient spirit of the wood stir within him. Then he smiled, and the music changed, becoming lighter, sweeter. The twins had followed a butterfly into the woods, giggling as it flitted from flower to flower. They'd chased it deeper and deeper until the trees closed around them, muffling the sounds of the outside world. Then they saw it, a clearing bathed in golden light, and in the center, a single white oak. As the butterfly landed on its lowest branch, the twins gasped. It wasn't just a tree, it was alive. The branches swayed and shimmered, and the leaves rustled like whispers. The twins stared in awe, their laughter dying in their throats. Then the tree spoke. Its voice was like the rustling of leaves, and it asked them why they had come. We just followed the butterfly," one of the twins stammered. The tree rustled again, this time with amusement. "Very well. But what will you do now?" The twins looked at each other, their earlier shyness forgotten. "We want to see the magic," one of them said, her voice filled with wonder. The tree was silent for a moment. Then it spoke again, this time with a hint of caution. "The magic is real, but it is also dangerous. Are you sure you are ready?" The twins nodded, their eyes shining with determination. "We're not scared," they said together. And with that, the tree relented. It reached out a branch and gently touched their foreheads. "Then let us begin," it whispered. When Solana had first arrived in Rifthold, she was nothing but a pawn in a deadly game, a tool to be used and discarded by the king. But in the midst of the stifling, suffocating walls, she discovered an escape, a hidden passageway that led to a small clearing in the heart of the city. There, in the middle of the bustling metropolis, was a single white oak, its branches reaching toward the sky like a beacon of hope. From the moment she laid eyes on it, Solana felt drawn to the tree, and it welcomed her, sheltering her from the prying eyes and cruel words of the kingdom. Beneath its leaves, she found solace. It was here that she confided her fears and dreams, her hopes and regrets. And the tree listened, its roots spreading wide to encompass her pain, its branches swaying in sympathy with her sorrows. With each passing day, the bond between them grew stronger, until the tree became her sanctuary, her refuge from the darkness that threatened to consume her. But trees have limits too, and secrets can only be kept for so long before they start to show in the cracks of the bark or the rustle of the leaves. And when the whispers start, even a strong oak cannot hold back the storm. This has been a tale from the world of Aurelia, brought to you by Sarah J. Maas. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to follow 4 more tales from the world of Aurelia, and be sure to check out more of our content, because we have plenty more tales to tell. The threads of fate are spun by powers beyond our ken. Sometimes they gleam, a tapestry of sunshine and song. Sometimes they're lost in shadows, a melody unheard. You think the old stories all ended when the sun rose over the mountain. Think the tales were told and the world went back to sleep. If you would tell your own story, you need only listen. Deep beneath the old forest, where the soil had grown to quiet, something began to stir. Not a creature, not a voice, but a void, a silence so deep it drank color and song. It slipped between stones and memory, uncoiling like smoke with no scent. It had no name, but those who once guarded the path had known it well. They called it the unwriting, not because it destroyed it, but because it made the world forget it had ever been. And now it stirred again. Far above, in the clearing of woven light, the girl stood beside the rain creature. The glowing map still pulsed gently in the air between them. Several paths had grown dimmer. One had vanished entirely. "They're being undone," she whispered. The creature said nothing, but its eyes shimmered like mist in sunlight. It lowered its head and exhaled into the soil. Where its breath touched earth, a new sprout appeared, blue and silver, small but burning softly at the tips. A flower that remembered. "They're still walking," she said, watching the flickering path, "but something is stealing their footsteps." The spiral on the map began to spin, slowly. From it, 5 points of light sparked outward. The girl saw them in her mind's eye, 5 souls, scattered across the world, each one carrying something ancient and unfinished. Not warriors, not heroes, guardians. Each had once heard the path calling. Each had chosen silence. But now the silence had come for them, to erase, to unmake. "They must be found," the forest whispered, "before the forgetting becomes truth. Before the rain forgets how to fall." The child clenched her hands. "I'll go." But the rain creature stepped in front of her, not to stop her, to bless her. It pressed its forehead to hers again, and in that instant, her heart lit up with thousands of echoing steps, her own, the rainkeeper's, Ira's, Alan's, and voices she didn't yet know. The rain began to fall harder, from the canopy, from her own shoulders. But it wasn't cold, it was purpose. The map dissolved into her skin. The spiral etched softly into her palm, like a promise. And just as she turned to go, a faint ripple moved through the clearing. A single branch cracked not, loudly, but wrong. Off-key, the creature's ears lifted. The girl spun. At the far edge of the glade, a shadow without form slipped between 2 trees. It did not move like a person. It moved like a wound. And where it passed, flowers folded. Stones dimmed. The memory of the path blurred. She stepped forward, but the creature growled low, protective. It moved in front of her, mist coiling tighter around its limbs, forming fragile armor of light and dew. Its body shimmered, half fading, half forming, like it was becoming something ancient again. The girl took a breath. "I have to go." The creature looked back, and with a final blink, it vanished into mist, leaving behind a trail of raindrops suspended in the air, frozen in motion, a shield of memory. She stepped through, and the forest opened into a wider world. That night, the villagers saw no stars, only clouds, low and strange, pressing down like old grief. Ira stood by her window and whispered to the dark, "Protect the child, protect the flame." And somewhere, beneath root and ruin, the unwriting moved again. It did not rage, it did not scream, it simply erased. One note from the old rainkeeper's journal dissolved into blank parchment. One petal from the memory flower vanished like it had never bloomed. One path on the map gone, but the spiral still burned in the child's hand, and she was already walking. The world is vast and filled with wonders, but sometimes those wonders hide in plain sight. For centuries, travelers have crossed the bridge of whispers. Few remember its name. Fewer still the song it used to sing. It stands silent now, the wind snatching meaning from its arches, until there is nothing left but the cold touch of stone and the echo of waves. No one remembers what the bridge once was. What if I told you it was a door? Not of wood or iron, but moonlight and longing. What if I told you it led to a place where dreams were born and memories danced in moonbeams? No one would believe me, and even if they did, few would follow. The path is long and fraught with peril. Some say the bridge itself weeps, mourning a beauty that is gone forever. And who could blame it? For who could bear to leave this world, where shadows stretch and starlight gleams? Who would choose adventure when the road is so safe, and the fire burns so bright? It seems safer here. It seems warmer, safer, warmer. Yes, the Bridge of Whispers sings a mournful song. But what if I told you it still remembers the notes of its own undoing? Hidden within its arches, there is a place where dreams take shape and time stands still. A hidden stair carved into the moonlight, leading to a tower of twilight where the last stardust weaver lives. She waits, hidden and patient, for someone to hear the bridge's song and brave the path that leads to her door. And maybe, just maybe, in the stillness of the night, you can hear it, too. Do you dare climb the stairs to find out? You don't have to walk alone. Sometimes the bravest journey is shared with others. With each step you take, the world shifts, revealing secrets held close for centuries. An abandoned cottage whispers tales of laughter and loss. A babbling brook reveals glimpses of forgotten magic. Every rustle in the undergrowth, every chirp of a hidden bird carries echoes of the past. All around you, the world unfolds like an ancient scroll, revealing its stories to those who have the courage to listen. And when the path grows dark and fear threatens to consume you, remember, you are not alone. For woven into the fabric of this world are the memories of those who walked before you. Their hopes, their dreams, their fears, their love. It's all around you, waiting to be discovered. So open your heart, embrace the unknown, and let the whispers of the world guide you. Your journey awaits. If you seek a legend, look to the sky. The stars hold many tales, but none so grand as the weaver's song. Long ago, the weavers wove starlight into tapestries, so beautiful they brought tears to the eyes of mortals. Each thread twinkled with stories of courage, love, and sacrifice, forever binding the fates of gods and men. But when the darkness grew too great, the weavers fled to the highest tower, taking their loom with them, determined to keep weaving even in exile. There, in the heart of the twilight, they wove a final masterpiece, a shield to protect the innocent, and a beacon to guide the lost. Then, one by one, the weavers vanished, leaving behind only their songs and the echoes of their starlight. Some say they faded into the very fabric of the world, becoming one with the patterns of fate. Others claim they slumber until the world needs their magic once more. But perhaps the truest tale lies somewhere in between, a testament to the enduring power of hope and the timeless beauty of starlight. For as long as there are stars in the sky, the weaver's song will live on, whispering tales of courage, love, and sacrifice to those who listen closely. And now, I leave the rest to you. What stories will you weave into the tapestry of your life? Will you be a hero with a sword of starlight, or a healer who mends broken dreams? Perhaps you'll be something entirely new, a weaver of your own design. The choice, my friend, is yours. But remember, every thread matters. Every stitch tells a story. So choose wisely and weave with care, for your tapestry awaits.